Welcome to the Global Investor Podcast, a show that focuses on helping foreign investors enter the lucrative U.S. real estate market. Host Charles Carillo combines decades of real estate investing experience with a professional background in international banking to interview experts in all areas of U.S. real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Charles Carillo.
Welcome to another episode of the Global Investors Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Carillo. Today we have Ari Rastegar. Ari began his work in real estate investing in 2006 while still in law school, and today his real estate investments span 38 cities across 13 states and include vintage multifamily units, mixed-use complexes, storage facilities, and more. He was called the Oracle of Austin by Forbes and has just been inducted, I believe, the youngest person into the Power 100 for 2021. So thank you so much for being on the show, Ari.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So give us a little bit on your background prior, professionally and personally, before getting into your current real estate investing and developing.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of, people kind of bifurcate their personal and their business lives together. And, what I do in my business life is really who I am more so than what I do, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So there's very much a marriage between those worlds, and it goes from having my name on the door, which was something that my grandfather wanted. My dad, and it was an Iranian immigrant after the Iranian Revolution, and they kind of had to rebuild, and which has been the plight and the story of a lot of Iranian Americans that came here. So they really killed our whole family on that side. And again, our story isn't unique in that regard, but I'm very fortunate to be born and raised in Austin, Texas. I'm an attorney by trade. A lot of people don't know that I was actually an English major in undergrad. But with that said, I had to go to 2 community colleges before I got into Texas A&M because I was not exactly a great high school student, to say the least. A little bit of a rebel, to put it lightly. But then I spent some time in Mexico doing a study abroad. I speak several languages fluently, and one of them being Spanish and Farsi. And I always just was really enamored by beautiful buildings, and being an English major, and an attorney, you read a lot. And I still, very much of a big reader. Both my parents are big readers. My mother is of German descent. And my wife is half Guatemalan, half Spanish. We have 3 beautiful kids. So our kids were kind of like the United Nations that I always kind of joke about. So it's very much, although we are a very institutional firm with public pension funds, family offices as our bulk of our investors, high net worth individuals, some of the biggest entertainers, athletes in the world are also our investors, that are my dearest friends, so there's this blending of those worlds that we've put together that really has a human element to it, of knowing these folks, understanding our vendors, creating a better, user experience. But it came from a dream from my grandpa. He would tell me, and I know it's a little bit cliche, but he'd say it in Farsi of, they're not making any more land. They're not making any more of this stuff. And he was a doctor and a psychiatrist by trade, and I wanted to kind of do what he did. My dad's an attorney, and so he kind of, not unforcefully told me that I had to become an attorney and then basically do whatever the hell I wanted. Yeah. So, I mean, I've heard people say that I came from nothing, and that's just kind of not true. Being born in America, having, 2 parents, my parents divorced when I was really young, but, both, highly intelligent, both big readers, big into health and wellness. And it's kind of made me kind of who I am. But I, flipped burgers at Johnny Rockets when I was in high school, and delivered pizzas through college, and, decided when I was in law school, had this harebrained idea to borrow $3,000 from, to start buying little lots and partnering with a big developer north of San Antonio. And I was on the build side at 4 or 5 in the morning, doing all the work, whether from pouring concrete to sheetrock to electrical to roofing. So, and that wasn't exactly my forte, per se, but we started doing these little houses, like $80,000 loan, interim construction loan, selling them for 115 grand back in 2005, six, as you mentioned, and parlayed it into something pretty substantial. And then 2008 hit. And, luckily I had a great partner and he had the liquidity, and he saw the work that we had done. So on paper, it looked pretty sexy, in '07, but I kind of got out of it with my hat, good credit, paying back the money that I owed, and went to Wall Street and worked for some of the greatest minds in the world. Because my wrestling coach, ironically enough, and I wasn't that good of a wrestler by any stretch of the imagination, but my wrestling coach's cousin was the head of Credit Suisse's conduit lending business. And he gave me my shot. And we're still, actually, we were on the phone last night for an hour and a half. His oldest son works for me. Stayed very, very close. And, around, 2015, I kind of had the itch that this can be done in a better way. Wanted to come home to Austin. We saw the writing on the wall. Maybe that's why Forbes said the Oracle thing, but to me it was math. I've always been able to do the math in my head, so I wanted to really focus on the philosophy and the beta trade and the macro trade of what the city was going to become, in a city that I love. And we started off investing with great operators that I had met over the years working on Wall Street, and had a lot of investors that kind of knew that I was doing the work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And had the blessings from my bosses, who now are my investors also. And so they didn't hold me back. In fact, they said, hey, go for it. We'll invest with you. If any of the investors that are with us that want to invest with you, we're cool with that. And I just kind of co-GP'd or LP capital, or I lent money. I just played all the capital stack to mitigate risk. And when I felt comfortable with the model, we built our own property management company. We started buying smaller apartment complexes, renovating them, owning the whole spectrum, from the construction side all the way through property management, all the way through PE and acquisitions, and then built a horizontally and vertically integrated real estate platform across all asset classes. So we were building over 4,000 houses in Austin, in the Austin MSA. We have condos going up in Phoenix, condos on South First. We have a 3.5 million square feet industrial program that we're breaking ground on phase 1 in the opportunity zone in Austin, an office building in downtown. And that's not all of it. So,
wow.
And so that's long and short. I have 3 beautiful children that, when you get really tired and you kind of want to quit, which we all kind of get to that place when you're going after something big, you think of them and the life that you want to create for them. And I've always had a why, that's not about me, about creating a better experience, about taking care of our investors in a more human way than I'd really seen. And maybe that's the liberal arts side of me, that heart value that we bring to the table. But don't let anybody kid you, we're as much a data analytics, artificial intelligence backbone. Yeah. And that's kind of it, really, really in a nutshell. But I love what I do. My day job is risk management. I manage risk for a living, and manage, what all the scenarios are that we could lose money, because we're not the folks that swing for the fences. We're the folks that, do everything in our power just to not lose money. It's always been my philosophy, is just try not to lose money. And I'm not a magician. Maybe I'm an oracle, but I'm not a magician, right? I don't even know what that means, but that's always been the philosophy, is capital preservation, hitting singles and doubles. Let that grow. Every now and then you hit something big, and just work harder than anybody could ever expect, physiologically, psychologically, or humanistically, than anybody.
Yeah.
And that's always been my philosophy.
Nice. So I was reading this before about the singles and doubles, because I'm a firm believer in that as well. Can you explain a little bit more about how that is, and where we are now in our portion of the market cycle, how does that ring true for you? And why is that so important that you're not swinging for the fence on everything, you're just swinging for solid deals consistently?
Yeah, no, it's and the answer is actually pretty simple. Look, right now we're going into an inflationary environment.
Mhm.
That has been, Mark Twain has a funny quote. He said, "The rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated." And so I use that only to say that the rumors of inflation and being this dramatic kind of thing, that's just not what the math says. Are we going to have an inflationary environment to some degree? Yes.
Mhm.
But when you study history, and again, to quote Twain, being liberal arts, he said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme.
Mhm.
So we know we're going into an inflationary environment, and traditionalist investment philosophy is when you go into an inflationary environment, you invest in hard assets, whether that's gold, whether that's real estate, insulating from global risk. The public markets, are trading at PE multiples that are very much in the red zone. So we're asking for a major correction. If not for COVID and the money that's been pumped in, I think we would have had a major correction, which is also okay, right? The old saying on Wall Street is bulls make money, bears make money, pigs get slaughtered, right? And so you can make money as long as there's volatility and there's movement, and that's fine. But with singles and doubles, if you just look at the math, right? If you make 7% a year, and I know people want to triple their money, quadruple their money, and look, we want to make money for our investors, first and foremost, and keep a couple shekels for ourselves as well. In the process, we're not exactly running a charity, but at the same time, you can't do that if you're losing, if you're really losing money,
Yeah.
per se, right? And so we found that going after deals that are smaller than what private equity is looking at, but bigger than what local investors are looking at, there's a niche there. Certainly in our multifamily platform, which is, a 9-year, when you go after those types of deals where your objective is to not lose money, and you find a way through various stress testing, sensitivity analyses, whatever that is, you find that the probability of making money is substantially higher.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and when you're going after deals where you lower what you're, and it also comes back to the ethics around under promising and over delivering. Because if I have a significant belief or a high degree of probability that we won't lose on the deal, and look, I've done deals that I thought were going to take a year and a half. It took 4 years. I thought we'd make 20% return. We made 2% return. Right. So again, back to not being a magician. But when you have the philosophy around just not losing money, so when we're an investment committee and we're talking with the team that come from all different vantage points, we have a very diverse team, not only from different backgrounds, but different, creeds, different religions, different nationalities, which I'm super proud of, to have those different angles and those different, whether it's a sociological perspective, whether it's a, analytical perspective, having those different believable people around you to come up with the right answer and not trying to be right is very important. But, statistically, if you can show a way that the downside has been protected, you have what's called an asymmetrical risk profile. And that's a bunch of jargon. I don't like using jargon, but basically what that's saying is, how can I take the least amount of risk to garner the highest return? And that might be, I take this much risk to make 7%. Okay. But my risk is low, and we've always been in that low risk, kind of platform. And that gives you the staying power, because when you make investors money, even if it's smaller than, maybe what another quote unquote competitor is doing, psychologically that feels good. They know they can trust you. They know that they can whatever. And that harbors referrals, that harbors more trust, that harbors longevity. And we were out to build something that's going to last the test of time, and not try to just get rich quick or flip this, flip that. We're very patient in our approach. But it all comes down to that the ethos of Rastegar, the DNA of Rastegar, which revolves around the human element of not just being numbers on a page, whether it's our public pension funds that might give us $50 million, or, we're working on a deal right now where a group's giving us $250 million of equity to build out a platform. At the end of the day, like if you look at Texas teachers or CalSTRS, they might give you a check for $100 million, but there's 100,000 teachers behind that aggregated to get to that number. And we're very focused on that human element, that we're in a place of servitude, a place of contribution, because if I don't feel like I'm creating value, I don't feel fulfilled. And, I'm not a Ferrari guy. I'm not a Rolex guy. My wife will probably still kill me that I don't wear a wedding ring, but I also don't wear any other jewelry. I bought like 5 of the same damn Tiffany's rings and I was done. Like I just put them on the table and they end up being lost in whatever, fall down the black hole. But the key that I have found, and I think a lot of people, and so we've really ascribed to that methodology. And the more that we've done that and lowered our return expectation and stress test for capital preservation, a lot of times we've ended up making up a lot more money than we had underwritten. And that leads to this under promising and over delivering, concept, which is not only good marketing, it's just the right thing to do, and that's very much, what we believe in.
Yeah, was that Warren Buffett? First rule is not to lose money, and second rule is see rule number 1.
Yeah, don't forget rule number. Yeah, don't forget the first rule.
So when you're developing, obviously, when you're buying stuff that's already built, it's a different. I think it's a different focus on where the market is and where the neighborhood is. When you're building stuff, because you're in really hot markets. Let's be honest. I mean, Austin hot, Phoenix hot. I mean, these are really
Austin. I'm also born and raised in Austin. The folks that run this town are childhood friends. These are, and Austin is a town, not metropolis. This is not Dallas or Houston where when you come in, muscle your way in, write a big check. It just doesn't work that way. And there's only so much Austin, right?
Yeah.
Which is important to note. And I've lived in Dallas, I lived in San Antonio for law school, and I've lived up and down that I-35 corridor, of Texas. And Austin is a completely different market, but our focus is within the Sun Belt, which encapsulates, Phoenix, Nashville, Charlotte, Raleigh, Tampa, St. Pete. And like you said, we have invested in, 38 cities, 12 states, 7 different asset classes, and exited successfully. The bulk of our portfolio is within the Austin MSA, although we're expanding, we're building the condos in Phoenix and seeding those markets again, but we've already been successful in those cities if you look at our audited track record. But yeah, we do have the wind at our back, as I think with the underpinnings of what you were saying. But at the same time, a lot of other smart folks know that too. Yeah. So, what I found is in real estate, you make the money the day you sign the contract, and you have to create value. And people are like, oh, well, it'll appraise at this, and, the markets are going up. We factor that type of stuff to zero. And, one of my old friends used to say, you don't have to plan for good news.
It's a great saying. I like that.
So it's like, we just prepare for all the bad stuff. And if the good things happen, you get a little wind behind your wings, or if you're and I'm not the biggest sports fan. I watch my friends that are big athletes because I love them. Or if it's one of the greats like like Serena Williams playing tennis, or when Kobe was playing, or, rest in peace. I like greatness, but sometimes when you're swinging for that kind of single, sometimes your hips get around and it goes over the fence. That might not have been the plan, but, that's always been kind of the way that we looked at things. But when you're developing, it's a different risk profile because a lot of other things can go wrong. There's ways to mitigate that through cost completion guarantees and bonds around them, partnering with strategic people. But the risk profile on its face of buying existing assets, finance easier, they have existing cash flows. And so it's a matter of just asset allocation. Like, what's your exposure in multifamily? What's your exposure in retail? What's your exposure in portfolio analysis that still ascribe possible to generate as much money as possible. And that's always been what we do. And I don't see that changing by any stretch of the imagination. People don't come to us to go make, 5 times their money in 2 years. They come to us to not lose their money, you know, whether it's through IRA rollovers of high net worth individuals or even the pensions that need to hit their actuarial rate of return, which might be 6.25 or 7 or whatever. They're coming to us for safety. And that's, and that's what our focus is.
So what has been your biggest obstacle as a real estate investor and entrepreneur?
My ego. Early on thinking that I could do everything or thinking that I was right and wanting to be right and wanting to reinvent the wheel. And back again, and one of my dear friends, an investor and mentor, started a family business that his father started of grocery anchors. And, he worked there for 30 years. They ended up selling it for 9 figures. But these are just kind of, his wife is a teacher, and he was just a worker at his dad's shop. And they ended up buying more locations and reinvesting with no debt and had a 9-figure exit a few years ago, which never was the plan. And he said to me something very interesting. And I told him that I'm gonna steal this. I'm going to use it as my own, although I'm giving him credit. He's a dear friend of mine. His name is, Randy LeBlanc. And I'll send him this link and, he'll watch it. But he said something to me that always really stuck with me, even though I told him that I'm going to take it as my own. Randy said to me, look, Ari, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to keep it balanced and aligned. And it resonated with me. Like, it really hit me differently to hear him say that. And I realized that that's very much what we were doing. He just said it in a very poignant way. And I don't know if his father said that to him or where it came from, but when he said it, I just kind of went dead silent. And and that's really what we're after, is to find a better way, looking to the future. My friends and colleagues and, certainly my wife and people around me make fun of me. They say Ari lives 30 years in the future. And I'm kind of a middle child in the sense where I'm 39 years old. So I'm like the oldest millennial. So I'm like the big brother to, all the younger guys, but I'm the little brother to the, older real estate, veterans. And so I'm kind of like suffer from this identity crisis of not knowing exactly what it is. I still wear a 3-piece suit. So either you find me in a 3-piece suit or you're going to find me in a Rastegar hoodie in my Lululemon and a pair of Yeezys. We do a lot of stuff with Adidas. I know those guys really well, and they're very dear friends of ours. And but again, it's about, that contribution of, creating something that, makes people's lives easier, more efficient, at a better cost basis. Not, like the word cheap because that insinuates bad quality, but affordable, less expensive for the same value. And we're core value driven. They'll say, people that don't know me, obviously, I was like, I'm not a shark. I might be a lion, but I'm not a shark. Like, and Ari, incidentally, in Hebrew means lion. But I'm a lion, protector of the people that are on our team, and I'm proud of that. And I want my kids to be proud of me. I want my kids to be proud of their name. I want them to walk by these buildings and see. A lot of times I sketch out the buildings because in my heart I'm an artist. And Andy Warhol talks about business being the most fascinating form of art, and that's really been my canvas, where I get to, look at new design and new ways of thinking about what we're calling futuristic suburbanism, which is we build these big communities on these hundreds of acres, having iris scans to walk into the house versus keys, and eliminating dining rooms because no one goes in the dining rooms, lowering the footprint, expanding the kitchens because that's where most people eat, and being responsive to the technological changes, or better said, the way technology has changed the way that we live, and not fighting the current, but riding the wave of kind of figuring out, what the future is going to look like for the younger millennials, for Gen Z, for that future. And, again, one of my partners would say, if you ever say anything good about yourself, you have to say, if I do say so myself. So if I do say so myself, I think we're very well positioned with 400 years of conglomerate real estate experience at the PE level behind us to, really, help create what the future of living is going to be, the future of where they're going to, kind of be entertained as well as living. That's the platform we're building through a series of verticals, through our industrial vertical for logistics, because in growing cities within the Sun Belt that we named some of the cities, you need good logistics. So if you need logistics and you're growing, you need apartments. If you need apartments, you need houses. You need, so they all kind of play into it. So we've been agnostic as to what asset class we go after, because we're looking at it from 50,000 feet of what's needed within those communities, whether it's office, whether it's mixed use, whether it's multifamily, and finding strategic institutional partners that'll build out those verticals that are subject matter experts, versus trying to be a bunch of cowboys and just try to go do it ourselves. We believe in strong strategic relationships with subject matter experts.
Yeah. So my next question here, as we're finishing up here, and it kind of goes into what you were saying, but what are common mistakes that you see other real estate investors and entrepreneurs make? And is it being only in one asset class when they're in real estate? Is that one of the things? And what else do you see?
I think people I look at mistakes differently. So my book is coming out this summer called The Gift of Failure. Okay, and I'll send you a copy, when it comes out. And so mistakes to me, I look at with a slightly different cadence. And so knowing that my own mistakes, my own flaws, it's hard. It's another man's treasure. But I don't know how exactly to answer that question, because I could point out some things, and it's easy to point the finger these days on social media or on this. Oh, he did that, she did that, and kind of whatever. But there's a lot of very smart people out there, doing stuff that I might not understand. And I've seen some investment decisions made where, I looked at it and I was like, dang, that was pretty freaking stupid. And then, a couple of years down the road, I looked back at the same deal because I'm a data freak and I follow this stuff, whatever, and I was wrong. So, I've been very reluctant to point out, quote unquote, mistakes that other people are making, because I run my race. So I'm not looking left and right when I'm running the sprints. I'm just running my race and competing against the older me, right? Matthew McConaughey talks about this a lot of, my competitor is me, right? And so I'm very, reluctant to make any of those types of judgments. But what I can say for myself is the biggest mistakes that I've made are not surrounding myself with believable people from different vantage points, wanting to be right, and maybe, taking that a little bit too far, versus finding the right answer and knowing that it's not about me, it's about our investors, it's about the community, and pushing more towards growth and contribution versus being a money worshiper, which I'm not. Obviously, we've created wealth, that's no secret, but I attribute that to helping a lot of people. And if there's any mistake that I think entrepreneurs would make, as a holistic statement, is having self-interest. If you're doing something that is your self-interest just to make money, I don't agree with that. I think that's a mistake. I think that if you, and I was talking about this the other day, I think they posted it on my social media, that people always ask me, how do I build a big business? And I've been asked that question a million times. And how did you do it so young? And I was like, yeah, you want to work 160 hours a week and sleep 2 hours a night for 20 years? So I'm like a 80-year-old, 39-year-old in terms of hours on a 40-hour work week. I've been working, 10 years for me is 30 years, not counting compounded return. But if you want a big business, solve a big problem, find a problem that affects a lot of people. Yeah. And make it easier on them and take your element out of it. And a lot of times I'll look at, let's say, a marketing deck, and I'll be like, I don't really like the color scheme, but I'm not the customer. Mm-hmm. And so being able to take yourself out of it and say, oh, this is what the customer wants to see. They want to see these certain things. But in my mind, I'm like, well, why would I want to see a 3D rendering? Or I'm just using whatever random examples. But being obsessed with your customer in that Amazonian type mentality, that's the mistake that I see globally, is more self-interest than contribution.
Interesting. So great. So how can our listeners learn more about you and your business, Ari?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to look me up. I'm writing a children's book with a kid in the UK that was able to find me God knows where, but a simple Google search of Rastegar or my name, Ari Rastegar, you can find me. It's, if you really want to, and you have some persistence, or you have, you want to, be a part of our, Rastegar family of investors, you can find us. It's, just Google my name, Google Rastegar, and you'll see thousands of articles, hundreds of podcasts, and it's not that hard. If on Instagram, it's just at Instagram. It's pretty simple. If you want to find me, you'll find me. And we have a great team of people, great follow up, and you'll find that the people that you deal with at our firm are very loving, beautiful, beautiful people that truly care. And that's, I think, if I had to say my accomplishment, is being able to work with people that I love so dearly as humans and respect them tremendously.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. If you want to check out Ari, I would definitely start with that Forbes article about being the Oracle of Austin. It's very interesting. And I'll put all the links into the show notes. So thank you so much for coming on today, and looking forward to connecting with you in the near future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll send you the book when it comes out.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
Hi guys, it's Charles from the Global Investors Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're interested in getting involved with real estate but you don't know where to begin, set up a free 30-minute strategy call with me at schedulecharles.com. That's schedulecharles.com. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Global Investor Podcast. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play to get new weekly episodes. For more resources and to receive our newsletter, please visit globalinvestorpodcast.com. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode.
Nothing in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this podcast are limited to accredited investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure, subscription documentation, and are subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Syndication Superstars LLC exclusively.